Everybody, so if you remember a couple months back, I made a video when I demoed the Blackheart Aluminum Allroad bike, and I liked it so much that I wanted one for myself. Now in my experience, the geometry is perfect to be road biased, but off-road capable. Now if you're curious, a lot of the specs and my ride impressions are in that video, which is linked down in the description. But in this video, I want to talk about this particular build, why a bike like this is so versatile, and of course, why I chose aluminum over their flagship tie frame, or even a carbon bike from a different brand. But first, we need to get this thing built up. Okay, so here it is, the finished bike. Now, I realize that was pretty quick, so if you want to watch the full build, you can check out the video linked in the description. So starting with the frame, it's of course the aluminum all-road frame with the fork and the seat post being carbon. This is a size 52 frame and it weighs in at 1,570 grams, and the uncut fork and seat post weigh in at 530 and 275 grams respectively. So it's not a featherweight by any means, but technically it's a touch lighter than the flagship tie frame. And this complete bike here, as it's built up, weighs in at a very reasonable 20.5 pounds, or about 9.3 kilograms. Now, you may have noticed the colorway here. This is not a standard color because Blackheart now offers a custom paint program on the aluminum frame and fork, as well as custom paint for the fork on the tie version. Now, what's cool about this program is that it's not your typical frame paint, but rather they offer a Cerakote finish, which is a really durable heat-cured ceramic paint that comes in a ton of different colors. Something like 140 different colors to be specific. Plus, you can choose different colors for the frame, fork, and the logo, which gives you over 450,000 different color combinations. I did the math. Now, of all those options, I chose a matching burnt bronze color for the frame and the fork, with a graphite gray logo color for a little bit of contrast, but not too much. Now, there's a ton of information on the frame in my initial demo video, but a couple of key specs here. This is a higher end 7005 butted aluminum alloy, which is stronger than your typical 6061 aluminum. It uses a threaded bottom bracket, has standard 12 by 100 and 12 by 142 axle spacing. It's got 3 bottle cage mounts on the frame, and it supports 1 by or 2 by drivetrains. Max tire width for 700C wheels is a claimed 40 millimeters, and for 650B wheels, it maxes out at 50 millimeters. But more on that in just a second. Now, the trail for this size 52 is 62 millimeters, which is higher than expected for a 71.5 degree head tube angle. But I think the moderately low fork offset of 47 millimeters helps to stabilize the front end. Now, the rear center is 422 millimeters, so it's nice and tucked, with an overall wheelbase of just over 1,000 millimeters, which is one of the reasons this bike feels so zippy. Now, the build is centered around GRX 600 2x11, but I've opted to swap out the cranks for the relatively new 165 millimeter crank length version. Gearing is 4630 up front with an 11 to 34 tooth cassette in the back, and the wheels are by Logos, and these are the Epoché gravel wheels, for which I'm working on a dedicated video. They're super light, they're really refined, and everything just makes sense with this design, which is why I'm really excited to be trying them out. Now, the rims themselves are carbon with a 24 millimeter inner width, and the hubs are an in-house design, but they feature the DT Swiss style star ratchet system with center lock rotor mounts and straight pull bladed pillar spokes. The wheels weigh in at a remarkably light 1,365 grams for the pair. Now, the tires are the tubeless Ready Ritchie Speedmax Cross tire, which I was actually really excited to try out. Now, they look pretty aggressive, but all accounts claim that they roll really fast and offer tons of cornering grip. Now, these have a stated width of 40 millimeters, but they actually ballooned up to about 43 millimeters on the Logos wheels. And so this may be the only time I've ever wished for a tire to be less than or equal to the stated width, as they are simply too big for the rear triangle. Now, the tires don't rub the chain stays or the seat stays, but the tire itself grazes the back of the seat tube. On this shot here, they're inflated to about 20 psi, and there's maybe a millimeter of clearance, but then when I inflate to anything more than 28 or 30 psi, they definitely rub. So I'm not going to be running these tires, unfortunately, but I do have some WTB Radlers on the way, and so I'm excited to try those out as well. Now, the handlebars are the Ritchie Comp Butano 42 centimeter drop bars, which is actually a departure from my typical choice to run the Venture Max gravel handlebar. Now, the Butano bars are a little bit more road biased, so I thought that they would be a good fit for this all-road build. They're still relatively short and shallow with a 73 millimeter reach and 118 millimeter drop. So that's about it for the build. Now my plan is eventually to get a second wheel set for road riding, and I'll likely run a 32 millimeter slick since I'm not chasing KOMs and I'd rather prioritize comfort. Now this is of course one of the reasons an all-road bike like this has appealed so much to me lately. And that's because it's about as close as you can get to actually having two different bikes in one, and it should allow me to reduce the number of bikes in the garage here. Now of course if you're an elite racer or a weight weenie, then this may not be your first choice, but the capabilities of this thing on the road far surpass that of a slacker geometry gravel bike. And at the same time, if you put some chunky tires on it, it performs remarkably well off-road for the vast majority of trails that we ride here in Southern California. Now you might be wondering why I opted for the aluminum frame and not the Thai version, or even a carbon all-road frame from a different brand. And the answer is a little bit involved, but fundamentally, I no longer believe that the frame material itself is as critical in determining how a bike rides. Provocative, huh? Now, I just think that in 2023, any frame, whether carbon, aluminum, titanium, steel, or whatever, can be engineered to ride a particular way. Now, for metal frames in particular, butting profiles in the tubes, strategic design for compliance or stiffness, and even the manufacturing process will have a profound effect on the ride quality. And I think that the old mentality that aluminum frames ride harsh is entirely obsolete, which I believe is why we're seeing a lot of companies returning to aluminum as a viable frame material. Then when you combine modern frame manufacturing techniques with the trend toward wider, higher volume, and more compliant tires, well, I just feel that the frame material really starts to matter less and less, and a material like aluminum strikes a great balance between strength, weight, and affordability that just simply can't be matched by more exotic metals like titanium, and isn't as environmentally taxing as producing a carbon frame. But anyways, there it is, the new Blackheart Aluminum Allroad frame in burnt bronze. Now I would say in its current state, it's about 95% complete. Of course, I am planning to swap out the tires, as well as change a couple of small details here and there, but I think it came out great and I'm really excited to start logging some miles on it. Now, like I said, if you want more detail on the build process itself, I'll have a video focused specifically on that process, so you can check that out as well. And then I also plan to put out a longer term ride review in a few months, so definitely stay tuned for that if you're interested. All right, well that's gonna do it for this one. Thanks again for watching and thanks for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you next time.